curious that do you think that not having kids results in a little less happiness at the end of life?
That's a good question. Now, once again, this one would have to be solved empirically because there would be no theoretical way to do it. It turns out that couples don't have children are at least as happy as couples that have children, interestingly enough. Now, I don't know when they're taking that data, and there's many factors. This doesn't mean that in principle children are happiness zero. In other words, your particular child and your particular life, it could be immensely positive, and the CB could have been huge in the positive direction for you. God knows it was for my parents. All protestations to the contrary. So the point is that, however, what we see is, when we actually look at it empirically, we see that it's at least a fair shake for not having kids. Now, what we're going to find within this data is we're going to find enormous individual variation. So I know that there are women who are really, really tortured by the fact that they did not have children, and it's just flat out hard on them, and that it's just the way it is. They've got a maternal chip in there, and the way circumstances played out in their life, it just turned out that wasn't possible, and they really feel a haunting emptiness, and that's it doesn't surprise me that such a thing exists at all. I find that, by the way, much less, way more rarely expressed in males, although I have seen it. Okay, but I would say that I've seen it expressed in females probably 10-1 more than males, which is kind of interesting and indicative of essentially the natural difference between men and women in terms of the sort of emotional connection and investment that goes on with child rearing. So that's what it looks like, and that's what I know. And so if you can't have kids and you really wanted them, it's a tough situation. You can obviously mimic it a little bit in a number of ways, and that's one of several reasons why we have pets. Is that it's very much a parental type of a process, and a fascination with personality, and a joy of creating happiness in another nervous system that's dependent. This is very much akin to what's happening in parent-child process until teenagers, until they become teenagers.
So, Dr. Lisle, with regards to the study that or the data that you cited about couples being just about as happy with kids versus without kids, and I know there's limitations to that, as you stated, but do you consider that a paradox in that there's the biological purpose of life is survival and reproduction, but and the moods of happiness are designed to tell us that we're on that right path, but we can artificially create these moods of happiness without actually, reproducing.
Yeah, I think it seems a little bit paradoxical that when we think about it this way, that think about the way the nervous system is engineered. Is it's engineered to try to get you to do things that will cause the reproduction of DNA. Now, it's going to turn out that what that means is attraction, lust, romance, sex. That's what causes the DNA to be reproduced. Now, once the DNA is reproduced, you're stuck, okay? The little thing is squalling. It's vulnerable as hell. Okay, now we're going to spend a tremendous amount of time in anxiety over this enormous biological investment. This little thing is going to signal every little perturbation of discomfort that it's going to have. It's going to be screaming for attention and resources, okay, and protection, etc. So as a result, now suddenly, guess what our focus is now not on? It's not on romance, lust, sex, etc. Romance, forget about it. It's on making sure that this little thing manages to survive. Okay? And then it becomes on attempting to engineer socially and with instruction this thing's rise in the socio-cultural dominance hierarchy so that it can maximize its fitness displays and therefore have its own romance and sex process that's optimal with the best possible specimen on the other side of the table that we're trying to chisel 10% extra gene quality out of so that the grandchildren will then be fancy. Okay? So suddenly the game just went away from your own personal consumption of lust, romance, sex, adventure, and it just went into now we're incredibly fascinated with this process. Now, what did evolution do? Evolution essentially put a huge lure out there and a lot of positive affect around the romance, lust, sex, etc. That's what it did, okay? What it then did was it put a lot of anxiety, nervousness, tension, irritability, pushing and shoving, worry, put all kinds of things associated with the protection of this asset once you've got it. Interesting. Okay? So evolution engineered the human psychology in such a way that turns out to be optimal for the reproduction of the DNA, but by no means, if by following that script, you actually optimize the life experience of the individual. So that's the resolution of the paradox, is that evolution was never designed to optimize your happiness. It was designed to goad you into doing its bidding, and it was going to throw you little bits of happiness and pleasure along the way to get you to do it. And after that, it was going to throw you a lot of anxiety and tension and sweat. Okay? And so that's how it's done, and that's why we call this podcast Beat Your Genes, is because we're absolutely out to try to outthink that system and to try to actually optimize your personal life experience rather than optimize your DNA success.